Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 993, written by Barkela. In theaters, The Repeating Pattern of Life. To preface this story, I do not believe in ghosts or anything paranormal, but this is something I fully cannot explain. In case anyone is wondering, I have never taken any mind-altering substances and was over 16 for everything discussed. For context, I have worked at a movie theater for around 8 years. In late 2017, I received a promotion to manager and began to close the building at night. In short, besides office work, all that is required to close is to go through each auditorium in the theater and check to make sure nobody is still there. The first time anything unexplainable occurred was January 8th, 2018. I was making my rounds as usual, checking each theater to make sure everyone had left. When I got to Auditorium 9, one of the last ones left to check, I began to walk up the walkway towards the seat when I heard voices. I didn't think much of it, but was slightly annoyed as the last movie playing in that auditorium had ended nearly 2 hours prior to my check. It isn't incredibly rare for people to have long conversations after the movie has ended, but 2 hours is a long time. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I could tell they were a group of two, a man and a woman. As I approached the end of the walkway and neared the corner to look up at the seats, the couple must have heard my footsteps or keys because I very clearly heard the man say, "Hold on." I turned the corner and began to say something about us being closed and them needing to head out. Upon looking up at the seats, I realized there was nobody there. I swear to God, I checked behind every seat in the auditorium and behind the screen, absolutely nothing. Beside the entrance to the auditorium where I was walking up, the only other exits are two alarmed emergency doors on either side of the screen that lead outside. No alarms were set off, and I checked to make sure both were functional. Finally, I checked if, for any reason, there was some audio playing in the auditorium. The projector had completed its closing shutdown an hour and a half before I was in the theater. While still having no concrete explanation, I chalked it up to being tired and convinced myself I was just hearing things. Fast forward to a year later, with nothing strange happening, and the second instance occurred. This night, instead of checking each auditorium on the ground level, I chose instead to look in through the small windows in the booth, the upstairs area containing the projectors. While the view of the auditorium below isn't perfect, the top-down view is still enough to tell if any stragglers are still hanging around. I got to auditorium number 9, and peering in, I noticed a couple holding hands in the middle two seats of the middle row. I could only barely make out the top two heads above the seats, and their held hands resting on the cup holder separating them. Again, I was slightly annoyed as the last movie had broken hours prior. But at that point, I had drawn no parallels between this night and the previous one, 1 year sooner. Due to there being an employee staircase directly next to my location in the booth, it took me about 45 seconds to get to the auditorium. Walking up, I heard the muffled voices of a man and a woman, and at this point there was a certain degree of déjà vu. Sure enough, upon nearing the corner, I heard the man say, "Hold on." Immediately realizing the similarity, I paused, took a breath, and turned the corner. Nobody was there. I freaked out, checked under every seat, behind the screen, and both alarm doors were not triggered. Furthermore, I knew for a fact the projector was shut down as I had been in booth 2 minutes prior. This time, I took a step further in my search for an answer. I checked every exit camera in the entire theater, and there was nothing. I also checked the outdoor cameras that view the exit doors of the auditorium. Again, nothing. Finally, I looked at the assigned seating chart for the last show in that auditorium. It was a Hindi-language Bollywood movie that had sold no tickets that day. Needless to say, I was incredibly uncomfortable, and it only got worse when I realized the date. I kid you not, it was January 8th, 2019. I confirmed the first time was the same date by checking a text conversation I had with a coworker that night, joking about how I was losing it tonight, after the first instance. Again, I do not believe in ghosts or the paranormal, but ever since the second instance, I have not checked auditorium number 9 on January 8th. I have thought about this a lot since, and still have no possible clue as to what may have occurred. None of my fellow managers have experienced this, but I have also been the only one working the closing shift on January 8th for the last 5 years straight. If anyone has any theories, I'd be more than interested in hearing them. I recognize this story could probably be posted on Paranormal, but I don't really believe in anything paranormal occurred here. I can provide any further details that are requested, but I'm not willing to share any information on where my location is or what company I work for. As well, to clarify, when I say I don't believe in ghosts or paranormal, I more so mean in the horror sense, stuff like horror movie hauntings, throwing chairs or leaving messages in blood, that sort of thing. The Ghost Adventures TV show, for example. The idea of a moment or event being locked in time or souls unable to fully move on for whatever reason is something I am open to, and have considered here. I apologize for the closed-minded wording. It can be difficult to fully convey one's thoughts in text. Case notes for file 993. In theaters, the repeating pattern of life. The repeating pattern of life is very accurate. I'd like you all to imagine an ocean, but one that is perfectly still. No ripples at all, no waves. Now imagine ripples start forming, small oscillations in the field of the ocean. These ripples, in various formats and sequences and oscillations, represent energy and mass in the universe. Now, the field of life, the universe's fields, it used to be thought sort of in a sense of an ether out there. It's not quite like that, but these fields of life permeate everywhere, and they're in various formats. The EM field, the Higgs boson field that provides mass, basically resistance through movement of the universe itself. Unless you're a massless particle, but I don't want to get too deep into the physics. Needless to say, life is a giant ocean, and mass and energy in it are ripples in that ocean. Now, presumably given that, if we die, our physical mass is still there, rippling away. But the energy, too, doesn't just dissipate, in my opinion. I think it leaves an imprint in that spot. And maybe that imprint can travel a bit, but generally speaking, it's a repeating pattern of life. And it doesn't just fade away instantly, I think it takes time. And I think it can persist for a long amount of time if there's energy it can siphon away, and then it can endure for a long time, repeating perhaps the last events or most notable events, maybe in this person's life, or these people, this couple. Their moment in that theater, maybe decades ago, I don't know how old the theater is, was a key moment in their life, and they're repeating it. A kind of echo in time. But yes, I think eventually it'll fade away, and their story will conclude, at least in this universe, because there's also quantum immortality. So again, I think it's just an imprint. It's not their entire soul that's left behind. It's just a little fragment of it, a little droplet in the ocean. It still creates waves, just not a lot. And eventually, the ocean will return back to its standard entropy state, and they'll be gone, again, for us. They'll still be out there, dating away in other universes. Case file number 994, written by Smoke in the Arcade. Elevators return in full glitch force. This happened a couple months ago, and my friend and I are still perplexed about it. My friend visited me in my apartment complex. There's 2 elevators that are next to each other. As we're entering the building, making our way to my apartment, I live on the 3rd floor, and walking towards the elevators, we see a person just entering the left one and the door closing behind them. My friend presses the up button, and naturally, we expect the right elevator to open because we just missed the other one. However, after a short moment, the left elevators open again and it's empty. We both looked at each other in confusion because we clearly saw someone entering it. We had no explanation as to where this person suddenly disappeared. We even tested how long it would take for the elevator to go to the 2nd floor and come back, and measured the time. It took 40 seconds. That was the fastest possible. And we were both absolutely certain that when it happened, the door wasn't closed for more than 3 to 4 seconds. What do you think? A glitch, a ghost, or is there a logical explanation? Case notes for file 994. Elevator returns in full glitch force. Well, it's been a while since we got an elevator glitch, a few months at least. There's 2 possibilities. You could have witnessed the astral projection of someone else, and we know astral projections can interact with the physical world, so entering an elevator, sure, why not? The other possibility is just a classic DOP, and that's affecting an actual human being, which there are plenty of reports of that happening too. And it's almost always out of sight. It's very, very rare. Maybe I've read 2 stories where someone is actually disappearing in front of someone else. It's almost always when out of view. The more energy is interacting with any given object or person, the less likely they are to fade away, which I think is why doors and elevators are often involved in these kinds of stories. Blocking a view. A kind of elevator Schrodinger's cat. No radioactive particles involved at this time, which is always lovely. I don't want elevators with radioactive decay. Bad idea. And now time for the story of the day. Once, there was a fox who saw a bunch of grapes hanging from a vine. The fox, being hungry, tried to jump and grab them, but he couldn't reach. After several attempts, he gave up and walked away, saying to himself, those grapes were probably sour anyway. The moral of the story is that sometimes, when we can't achieve something, we tend to downplay its value to feel better. Instead, we should learn to accept our limitations and try to improve ourselves to achieve our goals. Well, I have to definitely agree with this one. And it reminds me of many cases where people approach someone else, ask them out, and then when they get rejected, they act like they weren't even attracted to the person to begin with. But that doesn't make any sense. Why would you approach them if you weren't? We can play tricks on our own minds. We can fool ourselves into thinking we're the victim. But no. We should know who we are, where we stand, and if we want even better in life, then let's earn it. Let's improve ourselves. Let's be better people. It's not just about lifting more weight or having more money or anything like that. Those can help, but it's just about being a better person and caring about each other. Honestly, that goes a long way. And like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.